Merry Cryptidmas! Happy December 5th, and today I've got a special cryptid for you. Say cryptid. So I am sharing this full video on YouTube, and those of you on Patreon get to find all the behind all the other doors. So what's behind door number 5? A very, very rough drawing of Krampus. Okay, let's move that. So let me tell you about Krampus. I'm going to go for a dark background because Krampusnacht. And oh, the lights went down in the cafe I'm in. Perfect. So, Krampus is depicted as a tall, hairy, monstrous, devilish type figure with fangs and horns, often curly, and generally in the pictures in the Krampus cards, so the cards that are put out with Krampus on, he's got a big, long, bright red tongue that lolls out of his mouth, and he has one human foot and one goat foot. So we're seeing these really strong imagery associations with the kind of classical devil figure. And he was first appeared in around the 16th century, and around the 17th century he became known as a companion to St. Nicholas. So on the 6th of December, tomorrow, I remember growing up and my German stepmother, when I was visiting my dad and my stepmom, and I was there on the night of the 5th, would put out my shoes outside my bedroom for St. Nicholas to put gifts in the morning or overnight, ready for St. Nicholas's Day or St. Nicolaus's Day on the 6th of December. And if she told me about Krampus, I'd have probably been even more delighted. So Krampus got associated with St. Nicholas because St. Nicholas, being a saint, would go around giving gifts to the children, and I'll probably share his story with you later in the month. But as a saint, he couldn't very well be mean as well. He wasn't allowed to dole out punishments to naughty kids. He wasn't allowed to be the stick to go with the carrot. So this is where Krampus got sort of associated with him as a companion. And so the night before St. Nicholas's Day, when he'd leave gifts for good children, Krampus would roam the land with his great big horns and his great big tongue and birch switches, which later became whips. And he would gather up the wicked children and stick them in his sack or his basket on his back and take them off to eat them or drown them or burn them or carry them to hell, or depending on the story. So the wicked children would get carried away, and the good children in the morning would go out and find treats in their shoes, or at least I got treats in my shoes. So a lot of cryptids are associated with being scary, and there's this deep-seated connection between fear and wild places, hidden places, and the unknown. It's a really useful one. It keeps us out of trouble, out of going into places where we shouldn't go, or at least it keeps some of us from going places we shouldn't go, because even if we don't know what the physical danger is, or we think, oh, well, we'll be fine, we're not going to tread in a bog, we'd see that. If we're worried about monsters, then we're more likely to be cautious, more likely to avoid. And legendary figures like Krampus have been used for that very same purpose, for keeping people in line with their behaviour. In this case, keeping children in line in their behaviour. It's quite fun that Krampus has come to be featured throughout the years when Christmas cards started to become a thing, greetings cards became a thing. Krampus got his whole range of Krampus carton, of the Krampus cards, where he'd be depicted on it like scooping children into sacks. And there are some that I've seen which have a female Krampus looking equally devilish but rather buxom, scooping up wicked businessmen and putting them in her sack, complete with the birch switches for beating and such, so make of that as you will. So Krampus comes from that Central Europe, Eastern Europe, and the Alpine region, particularly like South Germany, Hungary, Austria, Czech Republic, those sorts of areas. And older versions in the Alpines, you had Percht, a very similar figure, whose name is very similar to Perchta in South Germany, who is a bright female supernatural being, sometimes described as a goddess. And so Percht, who in the Alpines much more like Krampus, would be the Perchtenlaufen, the Percht runs, where you'd have Krampus, or not Krampus, Percht, with these female figures, these wild figures. And you'll find throughout Christmas time, this winter period, that association with the figures of like the wild hunt. And at various points, the authorities tried to ban Percht and the Perchtenlaufen, but they couldn't actually police it up in the mountains, so they continued on. And there were St. Nicholas plays, some like morality plays, and that inspired combining the two in those spaces, and over time, Percht became Krampus. In the 30s in Austria, their government tried to ban Krampus, and in the 50s they distributed pamphlets entitled Krampus is an evil man, warning against the dangers of scaring children with such a horrifying figure. Well, despite that, Krampus endures. Krampus still comes up, and in fact had somewhat of a revival in more recent years and has become more popular. And there are even like the old traditions of making wooden masks, of dressing up in animal skins, and of doing the big parades. There are, of course, downsides to this, and that is that the Krampuses on the Krampus run, so there'll be dozens and dozens and dozens of people dressed up as these horrifying devilish monsters, scaring the spectators or leering at them, but they often will carry whips or switches with them, and people sometimes get angry and retaliate. And apparently in 2013, in a place called East Tyrol, 68 people were injured. 8 of them were put in hospital with things like broken bones, and 60 of them were treated as outpatients because of these fights that broke out at the Krampus runs. So, you know, with all the cryptids that we have, all the different beings that there can be, do check out the previous Cryptidmas videos on Patreon. Santa's been our little mascot as we go through. There's a huge range of these different beasties, and even the ones that are most legendary, that people don't expect to really exist independently of our stories, like Krampus, well, they still have an impact. They still have an effect. There is delight and terror and play and real world effects of these. So I hope you have enjoyed, and that you'll join me for tomorrow's Cryptidmas. We'll see who's behind door number 6. I am aiming to do 25 cryptids in the 25 days for this advent calendar, and there are printables available for my Patreon, so if you want to support this artistic endeavour, then head on over there and sign up to the Curious Cryptid Club, where you will also get all the videos for Cryptidmas Advent Calendar, and also cryptid field reports and other stories for an upcoming show that I'm developing. I really appreciate the support of all my Patreons. I really appreciate your support. So if you enjoy this, like, share, subscribe, and even if you don't join me on Patreon, you can watch the shorts on YouTube and enjoy a Cryptidmas Advent Calendar, because we all deserve stories and cryptids and legends in our lives. So, see you tomorrow, 6th of December. Who will it be?